Hey, NewsNation's Chris Cuomo here. Now, on our show, I've made a commitment to you that we're going to give you the stories that matter. We're going to give it to you straight. We're also going to stay on those stories because that is rare in this business. It's rare in this world. That's where this podcast comes in. Let's get after it. I know that people in the White House monitor what I say. Good. And because President Biden and Secretary of State Blinken won't come on the show, I am forced to speak at you rather than to you. This is not my choice. I understand. I talk to people within your party at very high levels, elected and unelected, all the time. I know that the war in the Middle East is a major concern for you in the election. And I think that explains why you misplayed it the way you did today. Okay? You gave a mixed message. You talked tough, what sounded like a threat to your main ally in the region, and then you said you're giving them more weapons. You're treating the war against Israel as if it were another political point of compromise. This is wrong, but this is wrong, and we need to do better here, and there has to be change, and blah, 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 ceasefire. A lot of words, a lot of conditional language, a lot of half-speak, a lot of appeasement in a situation that is not about balance. It is about realities. And I get the pressure from the left. I get it. And I get how tight the race is. And I get how worried you are that you're not going to have the same base you had the last time. But that is not an excuse to be weak. There's a primary reality, okay? And we seem to have forgotten it. Hamas is a terror organization. You designated them as that. They stole people. They need to give the people they stole back to us, to Israel first. The hostages have become an afterthought. And that is wrong. And the reason it has happened is even more wrong. The reason it has happened is because other political exigencies and agendas have overtaken their relevance. The aid workers being hit, horrible. Matters, of course. Deserves attention, absolutely. But also makes the lack of attention to the hostages apparent. Hitting the aid workers, angels among us, is of course unacceptable. Everybody knows that. It also must be explained. And you should have called for that explanation today, because you know they already know the reason. This is a very sophisticated organization at the IDF. How can you focus on the aid workers who bravely took the risk to be there? Angels among us. That's why I and the team are willing to risk going there to see their work in action so people can see the need. But if you're going to say that what happened to them demands action, how do you not start with the return of the hostages as the most wrongfully injured victims in the entire situation? Every time you speak about what must happen, and you do not begin with, hey, terrorists, give back who you stole, you are giving terrorists a pass. Every time you don't start there, you lose the Israeli ear. Now, if Hamas gives back the hostages, which you would likely require as a sine qua non, without this, nothing, in any other situation, certainly if it were you in Israel's position, then you have leverage. You have a basis for an exchange of wants. Not stop, cease fire, expose yourself, and then we hope to get the hostages back. You wouldn't do that. You're asking Israel to do what you never would. And I don't know who else has. Pulling back, under threat, existential threat, meaning they want you exterminated. And, by the way, you don't get your people back first. And it does feed the idea. I know you hear this, especially you, Tony. And I know I hear it because I know who's talked to you about it. That it feeds this malignancy that Jews are treated differently. That Hamas is given more of a break than your main ally. Why even mention ceasefire before they give back the hostages? Now, there's an obvious reason. Too much death in Gaza. Too many innocents dying in Gaza. Children dying, starving in Gaza. You are right. We must all agree. But what has the best chance of motivating a mitigation? Threats to Israel? Never. Political pressure on Bibi? He loves it. All the more reason to force the main want. Get the hostages back. You know what response I get to this? Yeah, but Hamas, they don't want to give them back. They're bad guys. They need the leverage. Really? So instead, you want to force Israel to relent. Imagine how much stronger the message to Bibi would be if you came in saying, we told Hamas they have until X to hand over the hostages or else. And when they do, you need to do X, Y, and Z. The people in Gaza are calling for the release of the hostages more vehemently than you are. They know Hamas has put them in this hell. What do you know? Then you have a basis for telling Israel there has to be change. Otherwise, you're basically asking Israel to give Hamas the win and withdraw. It will not happen. You know this, which means you went in today saying those things to Bibi, having them reported when you know it's not going to happen. Not under Bibi, not under anyone, if the surveys are to be believed. So stop treating this as if Israel should be the bigger person. They are convinced they are targeted for extermination. Stop treating this like it's a debate about the debt ceiling, like it's brinksmanship, like it's a fake deadline. There is too much blood on the floor for this to be about a typical compromise, and you know it. The place to push is obvious. Hostages. And with Israel, aid. Several reasons. It's the right thing to do as a moral authority. People are starving. It's bad, and it makes Israel look bad. There is less aid getting in than before October 7th, and there is more need for it than ever. You are making a generation ready for radicalization. And that's understandable. If all you know is a life of squalor and death, what do you think is going to happen? And they're going to blame America as much as Israel. This is also a chance to widen the role of other allies to make this more regional with players and more stakeholders, even if they're only monitoring and securing aid, which you can argue Israel should not be in sole control of. And then you will have more reason to have peace because there's much more precedent of an international coalition monitoring humanitarian aid than there is for asking for a withdrawal without any assurance of safety. You can provide no assurance that Israel will not be hit immediately because that's what Hamas has promised. That's what Hezbollah is doing and the other Iranian proxies. Now be honest. You have ignored. You have given Iran a pass. You have given them back billions of dollars. If you're going to make Israel take on Iran for you, then at least give them a chance to be successful. This is not ending anytime soon, and you should tell the American people. It will likely get worse, and you should tell the American people. Aid is the place that makes the most sense, that is most needed, and has the best chance of making a positive difference. What you were saying today was a mixed message that made nothing better. It may have pleased your left flank that is hyper-sympathetic to the suffering in Gaza, and there's nothing wrong with seeing the humanity in that. But that's not your job. Your job is to do something about it. And if you want to help it stop, deal with the suffering and do it smart. This is Chris Cuomo. Get my podcast, Let's Get After It, at newsnationnow.com or wherever you get podcasts.